The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. It's been probably about 2 or 3 years, so as usual, like a lot of these books coming in are probably stuff I've read, because try to squeeze in that year, because that's probably when my level or quantity, I tried to up the quantity of reading a lot more in 2021, so this is, yeah, a little bit old of, rusty in the back of my head retaining it, so I had to I had to read up on it a little bit. But yeah, Thomas Mann, The Magic Mountain is a interesting kind of interrogative, inquisitive kind of novel. And judging from the look of it, it is almost like 700 pages, or at least this version. And it follows the whereabouts of Hans Castor, I think you pronounce it. Yeah, Castorp. So I'm guessing it's Castor. P is silent, I guess. And he's a young man in his early 20s, and he's going off, and it's described as Bildungsroman, which is like a kind of novel of like education, especially for the youth, for so many young people. And it's kind of like a moral, not only like an intellectual, but also like kind of a moral development too, I think is implied. Hesse wrote a fair amount of Bildungsroman, and there's a different kind of thing as well. There's like a side thing, but you kind of see them today. I think some of the stuff by John Irving, who I've yet to read, is kind of like that, in that vein. But I can't remember there's another kind of subcategory of that's also, but it's like a little bit more specific. But anyway, so yeah, it follows Hans Castor, and he's a German man. I think he's from Hamburg, and he's going off to visit. So his life is like kind of up in the air, is what I think it's right. It's right now. He's not really sure what he's doing. But he does know that he has plans to be a shipbuilder, somewhere in Hamburg, where I'm guessing it's probably propitious to be for that career. And he has an uncle, a maternal uncle, I think, who is more close to him, and he's kind of like guiding him, and he's like, this is like one possible way he could, and it is early 1900s, maybe like 1910s at this point, so maybe a little bit earlier. It's not really explicitly stated, but you do have kind of the looming effect of the First World War kind of in the background. Not really too obvious, but it is definitely kind of there. It's portending towards that, and he's staying at this. He hears about his cousin, Joachim, who is staying at this sanitarium up in a mountain, which hence the titular Magic Mountain, because it's like up in this kind of air, this kind of very like organic, like natural kind of like deep in nature, and it's like it's isolated from society, and it's really, there's a very kind of like a not magically realistic, but like a very like potent, heady, almost intoxicating like effect of this. Like it's like it's very like enamoring. Like you're like, it's like isolated from society, but it's this place where sanitarium, so it's not just for I might be a little bit incorrect in assuming, but it's not just for like a medical kind of the physical body, or like epidemiology, or curing somebody of, but it's also curing of the mind too. It's like, it's a place, it's right when psychoanalysis, wow, I can't say that word still after all these years, especially the Freudian variety, was very big around this time, and it's like, or at least that's when I'm getting the sense that there's a bit of a psychoanalysis going on, or not too unlike that process, and it's this long healing process that is this arc of this novel. It's like, Hans goes there, not really expecting to go there, because he's like, he has a bit of I think it's like a bronchital thing, like an infection, and he's like, fears a little bit, and he's like, okay, well, I'm still young, I don't need to be here that long, and he's like a little bit impatient, a little bit wants to get it over with, so he ends up following his cousin Joachim to this sanitarium up in the not in the Alps, but up in the mountains, and he's like away from society, and he thinks it'll be like, okay, well, maybe I'll just reconnect with him, and that's what happens. He goes there and he's reconnects and he bonds with his with Joachim, and again, like, he doesn't really expect it to be there. He's not that much of a inquisitive, inquiring kind of curious person. When, like, he's a little bit callow, which is expected. I mean, show me somebody in their early 20s who isn't. But yeah, he shows up there like, not, quite sure what he wants out of life, and then over time, like, he continuously, it's almost like to a comedic effect, which I don't think was by accident on Mann's part, because I think there's a little bit of satire going on here, and like the way Mann shows that his every time he tries that, Hans is like tries to he's like, well, the healing process, okay, it should be over now, right? And then like the second he tries to checking up with the doctor, like, the doctor will be like, oh, there's actually one last little thing I've got to do. So he ends up like lengthening his stay by a lot more than he initially anticipated, but it's not with any like acrimony. He's not like angry about it. It's like a weird, almost like a Stockholm effect syndrome kind of thing. To use an old cliche, where it's the atmosphere of this sanatorium is so intoxicating, and it's like, yes, there's things going on in the outside world, like the whole world, there's like prospective careers he could be doing as a shipbuilder. He could be he could possibly do, there's all kinds of current events and things happening, like upheaval going on in Europe, especially, that's like leading up to this terrible war, and he's like, and then there's this tiny little sanitarium that's like packed away in the mountains, that is just focused on just like healing of the mind, healing of, and it's like a cozy kind of thing, but it's like a little bit, it's almost like a little bit too potent there. It's like almost like a little bit like, you get the sense that Hans is a little bit of two minds about it. I think is how I remember it. Like, he's like, at first he's like fighting it, and then eventually he surrounds himself with a lot of different people, like very informative kind of almost archetypes of like the pre-war, I guess, as different people have described them, characters that are like humanists, or like self-made, in a slightly similar way that Jean-Paul Sartre used, in Nausea. He used like different people, like the self-made man was kind of like a staple of somebody he might have seen wandering around in France before World War II or during World War II, who's like, I guess World War II, I guess is what it said, in the 30s. But yeah, but it's a similar thing with that, where it's like there's quite a bit of different not sentimental, but it's like there's this one man named Sedembriti, who's an Italian guy, and he's like very, very much a pacifist humanist, and he teaches like Castor, and he has long talks with him, and it's like long pages where it's just like long huge long, I don't think I'll be able to find it off the top of my head, but there's huge, just long blocks of text where it's just Sedembriti talking about humanity in Italy, and excuse me, he's very much influenced by this one Italian pacifist. I can't remember his name, but it's like, I think it's Situcci or something. But it's very much obvious when Mann kind of inserted him that he was a follower of that person. He's a lots of talks about peace and world peace and all that, but not in kind of like not in a quixotic way necessarily. It did have some kind of basis or root to it that made it seem believable. He wasn't just like this madman. He would seem like pretty reasonable, at least from what I recall. But yeah, then there's this other person, like humanist, lady, or I'm not certain, it's not a humanist. She's a Jewish lady, I think, as well, who's befriends them, and they all have these long conversations. And yeah, she's they're kind of all these different kind of interesting thing with time too, like the fact that time, it's almost like modernist in the sense that the timeline is showing, there could be very interesting conversations that might be only, maybe a few hours long, and they all, you know they unfold over like numerous very, several, even like 40, 50 pages at sometimes, in a similar way Proust kind of has dinner table conversations with, the aristocratic France, kind of in the promising day early, the pre-war France as well. That, it could be like 100 pages of just them talking. And yeah, I get how that could be tiring, but it's very much kind of, you can tell that there's something very important in these discussions. Like, they're not just, just making it up. He's not, I don't think, either of them had any, or anybody else who kind of dispensed or used these kind of techniques, I suppose, like, of just kind of showing things as they are, kind of. And yeah, that kind of dichotomy of the time too, of like how, all in all, it's Hans ends up spending 7 years at this sanatorium, and it's right before the Second World War. I'm sorry, the First World War. Not that long. It hasn't been 30 years. It's been 7 years. And Hans is, he's fully grown. He's fully, he's kind of very much had time to. In a sense, it's almost like a sabbatical. He's like it's almost like a Tibetan kind of, monastery in a sense, because he's like, there's like religious there's an underlying kind of religious tone to it, not explicitly, but it's there's certain people there that had religious kind of things that might have been, so he has like all these different worldviews, and has, all these different staples of different kind of ideologies, all kind of communing under the same roof. And he's, in a way that kind of like transforms him, and he makes him kind of ready for the world. And then by the time he's out of there, it's like World War One erupts, and it's just like he's conscripted, and he's thrown into the middle of this, in the middle of war, and that's where it ends, right on the note of Castor. Basically he's like the second, and Mann has it like very, kind of portends a little bit, foreshadows that he might have actually not come home alive from that war. So it's kind of showing that it's a little bit similar to Damien by Hermann Hesse, in the sense that, Emil Sinclair is kind of through his eyes of kind of, in fact, that's like, I think the title of it, Damien for, but yeah, there's, I think like he, at the end of it, like it's, Damien goes off to war, and it's like kind of, insinuated that, like it's up in the, it's not entirely certain whether he comes home or alive or not. So there's like the uncertainty of kind of these life, thematic, very defining world current events and stuff that are happening, in a stoic sense, like whether you like it or not, like this is the stuff that's going on right now. And it's like, and it's like, you see that too. It's like, I see that kind of like what happens, like maybe in like Russia, or like, so maybe the fact of you, even as like long as maybe just a few years ago, like the different kind of invasions or things, or different very heated, tumultuous events that are happening, brewing up, and the dichotomy, that kind of almost opposing, I guess, contradictory kind of like calm, kind of like equitable and meditative, and then like there's just like the world, which is just like completely just crazy in some places. and fundamentalistly, just crazy. Not just in a religious sense, but just kind of in a in a rigid, dogmatic sense of just being like, we will kill you, like whether you like it or not. Like that's kind of out there, and I think like it's important to kind of like not to dwell on it, you know, too much to the point of obsessiveness. But I think like every once in a while to kind of negatively visualize. I think it's not unhelpful. I think like to kind of to see like what could happen if like because yeah, there's these things are outside of our control. So, but yeah, that's in a nutshell, The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. Definitely recommend it. So, but just don't take my word for it. Of course, the things that you might come to read it and just not enjoy it, which it's easy to kind of maybe write off those long sections, but yeah, maybe just give it a try, and yeah, maybe the challenge is worth it in hindsight. But yeah, thank you for watching.